you up for no reason. Yeah, nigga. Yeah.
Listen, you move. I'm gonna fucking break your head.
Out of my face, it's illegal. No, it's not illegal. No, it's not illegal. No, it's not illegal. The fuck out of here.
Peace, everybody. Welcome to Copwatch Media. It's our second podcast episode. My name is Josmar Trujillo. I'm joined here by my partner, Ash.
Hey, I'm Ash, and you can catch me on Twitter at @AshAgony. And we're joined today by special guest host, Elsa Waithe. They're a cop watcher and a comedian. Elsa, thanks for joining us. Tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Hey, yeah, exactly. Elsa Waithe, cop watcher, comedian, instructor, motivational speaker. I've been on BET, MTV, NPR, and other three-letter things.
Word. Word.
Happy to have you.
Thanks for having me, folks.
Word.
So we're going to start off first by a piece that we had on the NYPD Strategic Response Group by Elsa Waithe. And I want to just actually turn it to Ash a little bit, talk a little bit about that piece.
Yeah, so in the piece, Isabel, who's an organizer with the NYCLU, pretty much went over quickly the history of the SRG, which was founded under Bill Bratton in 2015. It was originally founded as an anti-terror police unit, but that was soon revealed to be bullshit, essentially. And it became the protest beatdown unit, basically.
Goon Squad.
Yeah. And so Isabel basically went over that history, but also the more recent history. So before 2020, SRG had a little bit of a reputation for protecting right-wing groups like the Proud Boys. There was an infamous incident in Manhattan where the NYPD essentially let the Proud Boys beat up some anti-fascist protesters after a right-wing group, including Gavin McInnes, had a meeting at the Metropolitan Republican Club or something like that? Some Republican
loser club.
Some Republican space. And but then after 2020 and during 2020, SRG became much more notorious for and much more widely known for beating down protesters, especially, people before that they beat down protesters, but in 2020 a lot more people got to see it. And more recently they also become notorious for being at the clinic defenses. Essentially, every month, there's a group of religious theocrats who try to go and harass people at a local Planned Parenthood in Manhattan. And there are counter-protesters, pro-abortion, pro-choice protesters who go and try to stop them. Yeah. And routinely, the SRG is there to protect the theocrats and beat down and arrest the pro-choice protesters. So in the piece, Isabel calls for the disbanding of the SRG and talks about the campaign to get rid of the SRG. So what do you guys think about that? Yeah.
I mean, we've had run-ins with the SRG for a long time, even before the George Floyd uprisings, right? Elsa, you ever had?
Most definitely. I remember when it was formed. It thinly veiled for terrorism protection, but we all knew, that was going to, that facade would drop pretty quickly. And I've always thought that if someone was going to shoot something up or blow something up, a squad of police aren't going to prevent it from happening, right? Yeah. So it already felt like it wasn't what it was going to be for. And, very quickly, you're showing up at protests and you're showing up at demonstrations, and what terrorist activity is happening here? Yeah. Why do you need to be here? What strategic response do you need for this? So very quickly it devolved into what we knew it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And it's just every outing, every time you see SRG, they're proving what their real intent and purpose was in the beginning. So yeah, we've been from 2015 experiencing what they do.
Yep. And what I liked about Isabel's piece too is that she kind of gets into a little bit of the data of the little known data that we have about all the misconduct that a lot of these cops have. You know, for people who actually need like evidence of misconduct, you can look at one of these squads and see like all the people that have all of this like paper trail of CCRB complaints and, you know, lawsuits against them. I like that the piece was really thorough. It had a lot of breakdown about like who these people are. It's not just bad that the unit is bad overall, but also like specifically these people have all of this misconduct that they've done, you know, to get to that position, you know, like as regular cops.
It's almost like they take the police officers.
It's not a mistake. It's actually
it's not a mistake with who it's formed with. You know?
Exactly.
They seem to take the ones with the longest paper trail.
Hey, you have 100. You're perfect for this squad.
You're perfect for this squad. So they're putting together a squad with players who are going to be already fitting this sort of mold.
Yeah.
So
Isabel, even in the piece, Isabel brings up in the SRG Bike Squad manual, the examples given for violent crowds are BLM, anti-Trump demonstrators, and Occupy Wall Street. So that should tell you straight up from the get-go, the SRG looks at protesters as violent crowds. Yeah. And also talking about the data she brought up, she wrote, between May of 2020 and January of 2021, our monitors documented 39 instances of police arresting non-violent protesters, 23 incidents of kettling, and 25 instances of use of force, including pepper spray, beatings, and the use of bicycles. The SRG was present and participated in every instance of kettling, every instance of arrest, and all but one instance of use of force we documented. So, you know, when the cops are doing some fucked up shit on protesters, it's usually the SRG who's doing it, essentially. So.
Yep. So another piece that we ran on the website earlier this month was a piece that actually came to us from a public housing resident out of Red Hook, Faith Anderson, who's part of Red Hook Initiative, which is a community-based organization down there. She's on a public safety team within RHI that does a lot of stuff around policing. And she was actually at a rally outside Brooklyn Borough Hall to rally against the NYPD's use of the gang database. And really to push for like abolishing the gang database, getting rid of it altogether. So Faith's piece was really good. It talked a little bit about the rally, about who was there, about why she and others, like these are all young black teens and young adults in Red Hook, you know, really are pushing for this, for abolishing this database and like kind of like their experiences with police. It was great because it was another first-person perspective we've had. This is, I think, our third piece from a public housing resident out of Red Hook houses. And this one, she kind of broke down this rally that they attended and why. You guys have any? What have you guys seen? I guess in terms of like work around the gang database, or you know.
Well, what I understand and what I know about the gang database is that it's super easy to get on it, right? Yeah. Like, you don't have to actually be. Obviously, in a gang. You can just know someone. You can be, you know, living on the same floor as someone who is. You just happen to have on the right colors one day.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. Or chill in the same block with certain other people, or whatever. Chill in the same corner or whatever. And
so they might legitimately, you know, have identified one or two people, but you know, to make it a gang, we gotta get everybody. So if you've breathed the wrong way around the right person. So it's super easy to get on these gang databases, and then you can't get back off of them.
Yeah, exactly.
you can't get back off of them. And so I find that it's a really good way to start criminalizing people early. To get eyes on people, surveillance. The work that I know that's happening around it is just like get rid of them completely. They're not as effective, you know, when you have a list of, let's just say 100 people and only 2 or 3 people on that list is legitimate. You know, it's also just a waste of resources. You know, like sometimes I'm just like, police work themselves backwards so many times. If they were actually effective in saying they do the things that they say they do, folks wouldn't have a problem. But you got a list of 100, 200 some people, and only like 2 or 3% of that is legitimate. You wasting my money, me.
And then there was an infamous incident where I think one of the police officials were asked if the Proud Boys and, you know, other like far right and white supremacist like gangs groups were on it, and they said no. They said maybe, might be, it's possible, but no. So like even the people who I guess should be on it aren't on it, and plus like there's kids as young as 13 years old on this list. Like when I was 13, I had a crew. You know what I mean?
Friends.
I chill with, yeah, like. Up until like my early 20s, there's a crew of people I chill with, smoke weed with, we chill on the block or whatever, and like to the cops, we were a gang essentially, right? But we were just chilling on the block, smoking weed, like having fun, like doing little stuff like young people do in New York, you know? So like,
again, if these things were actually effective, if what we know and identified to be terrorist groups, white supremacist groups, were parts of these lists, then you know what I'm saying. Like but you're just sweeping up and grabbing up children and any and everyone that you just have an inkling about these. It's not effective. There's no reform in it. Get rid of it.
And Faith and others kind of pointed out that it's kind of like digital stop and frisk or stop and frisk 2.0 is what a lot of people have called it too. And full disclosure, I was at this rally because I support the work that's happening around this. But the basic idea is no different than stop and frisk. The only difference is instead of doing it to every black or brown person in New York City across the board, now they're saying we're going to go after the right people, the gang members, and so they changed a little bit of the rhetoric, but it's basically the same recipe. Another piece that we had this month was early this month or at the end of August. We had actually our first international piece. So just so everybody knows, Copwatch Media is not just NYC. We focus on NYC because we're based in NYC, but we go national, international if we have to. And this piece actually came to us all the way from Nigeria.
Cops be cops everywhere.
Yeah, no.
Cops be cops everywhere.
What the piece basically says.
Yeah. Elsa, you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, so it's an excellent piece. Essentially, cops be copping everywhere, right? And we're drawing parallels between what's going on here in America and just really the rise of fascism, fascist police everywhere. I encourage everyone not only to check out this piece, but I think what really helps folks get connected in globally is like learning about what's going on and drawing those parallels.
Yeah. And
seeing that folks in Nigeria are dealing with the same sorts of things. I think it's a beautifully written piece and very illustrative.
Yeah.
Read.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Yeah. In the piece, Amatoyosi, I think her name is, basically lays out. She went through a very bad situation with the guy she was going out with. He kind of was stalking her basically.
Harassing,
she went to the cops and the cops weren't willing to do anything.
Sounds familiar.
We'll talk about this later. Like we talk about like Law and Order SVU, they try to make cops look like they really care about sexual and gender violence, but in reality,
right
here in the United States and across seas, the cops don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? And she lays out in the piece that the cops are there to, along with maintaining white supremacy, the state capitalism, also patriarchy, and they do it violently too. So like. If you want to fight, gender and sexual violence, you want to fight patriarchy and chauvinism, the police are not who you should go to for help. Basically.
And one of the fucked up things about that piece too was that she said that she actually went to another agency that was supposed to help with, situations like this, and they wouldn't help her until she involved the police.
Yeah.
And like she didn't want to involve the police because of what she had heard from bunch of other women and girls in her town in Nigeria about it. Sounds familiar. So
sounds familiar. So,
we want to give a big shout out to all the way out to Nigeria to Omar Toyosi for sharing that piece with us. Marks our first international piece, but like Elsa saying, it sounds unfortunately all too familiar for even here in the States.
And it really proves that all cops are bastards. Not just the ones in the United States. The A in the ACAB is very important. All cops.
Capital A.
Yeah,
and also what I like to sort of like point out is that a lot of what we talk about police brutality here in America is also like racialized as well, but police officers are class traders. So you could be in a homogeneous racial society, where most people are black, your police officers are black, and that still doesn't matter, right? You're still setting up that hierarchy.
Yeah.
Right?
And these police forces are the legacy of colonialism.
And they
too.
all, if you do trace it back far enough, we do get to the racism, right?
Yeah, exactly,
but when people are like, but it's a black cop, and
even though every police force in the third world basically is the legacy of colonialism. It was the white man who put them there.
Right, yeah.
And once the white man left, basically the cops stayed, but they still support that same system.
Just trace it back a little while, you'll find it.
Yep.
But anyway.
How long ago was KRS-One black cop? I mean, shoot. I mean, like, just because we got black cops doesn't mean a goddamn thing. So
Anyway.
That's right. All right. Next, we're gonna just get into a segment we're probably gonna start to call "In the News in the Streets." So anything that we've seen, kind of going on about cops, jails, courts, anything that's related to law enforcement, and also in the streets, anything that we're seeing in the streets in terms of movement building or stuff that really we want to start to highlight. So we'll actually start with at a real basic level, which is the subway. Elsa, you had a little something that you saw on the subway that caught your eye.
Well, okay, so we know, especially with Eric Adams, that the subway has become a bit of a battleground.
Yeah.
I see recruitment posters all the time in the subway for the NYPD, right? And then last year I seen them for Metro Police, DC Metro Police. But this year, I'm from Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia.
Shout out to VA.
Yeah, 2 up, 2 down, folks in Virginia. They've got ads in the subway for recruitment for Norfolk Police. In New York City, they're telling you about the bonus and what come join us down here in Virginia. And I was just like, wow. I took a picture and everything because I was just like, I even asked my friends, I was like, is something going on in Virginia? Why are they trying to recruit police from New York City specifically? And what I've come to understand is their police are leaving in droves from police forces down south and are being replaced by police who are leaving police forces in New York.
I saw the same thing. I sent you guys the tweet. And in Florida, Ron DeSantis had a tweet kind of bragging about him welcoming NYPD cops to come to Florida and become cops down there. And basically his pitch is like, oh, we'll come treat you really. We'll let you beat anybody you want. We'll let you shoot anybody you want. You won't even have to worry about, liberals saying anything slightly critical of you down here because, free reign.
I mean, because we really restrict the cops here in New York.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And that's what kind of underlies all this idea that, like, here in New York, for example, like, the cops are under siege and they're not allowed to do nothing here when that's not the case at all. The cops we have a cop mayor. I mean,
right. Yeah. Real anti-cop, right?
I hypothesize that some of it is, right? Like, leave your liberal, your liberal hellhole and come down south where, we have less restrictions on you. The little bit of small, teeny, tiny sort of reforms here are enough to be like, well, guess they're cracking down on us being a cop, right?
Exactly.
They love to say handcuffing cops. Like, they do the handcuffing, but then when they want to say, like, things they're not giving us what I want, they're handcuffing us. Like, no, motherfucker, you're the one with the handcuffs. You do the handcuffing. No one is handcuffing you from doing shit.
But I'm hearing anecdotally, and I'm sure if we did some a little bit more research, but I'm hearing anecdotally that there's a migration of cops from northern cities down south and out west.
Cop migration.
The great cop migration. And also it has to do something like, I heard something to do with like vaccines and stuff.
No,
like,
that too.
They're not going to make you get vaccines in other places.
Ron DeSantis was also, that was part of his pitch too. Like, you don't have to, you can get anyone sick down here. You can spread COVID all you want down here. It's fine. Don't wear a mask or nothing like that. Yeah. And you can shoot people. You can kill people in multiple ways.
It was one thing to hear about it, and it was just another thing to like see the ad and really be confronted with it. Yeah. And they are definitely like leading with the fact that Norfolk, Virginia has a really huge military presence. They're definitely leading with the fact that with how much more money you could make down there. Like I see there's a couple of different ads that I've seen, and it's one of those ones where they like the whole half of the subway car is that one ad over and over. So I took a picture of it and sent it back home. I was like, why is this feels uncomfortable? Yeah. I kind of understood why they were doing it for DC police because after January 6th, they were they look like heroes. Yeah. And if you feel like you're being disrespected in New York City, like come join DC police. That made sense to me, but to go even further south, it's like y'all want to keep going
For real.
Well, then let's actually get into this a little bit because I have seen on some of the social media accounts of the cop unions, they're pushing out and the New York Post, which is basically the mouthpiece for the unions anyway. This narrative about like cops are leaving in droves, cops are all demoralized, from being protested and all this stuff. So cops are leaving New York City.
Exactly.
So number one, right? Like keep going, motherfuckers. But number two, this could actually lead to some people to feel like, they need more cops, right? Because cops are leaving, so they need to recruit more.
Right.
So this goes into the whole issue of like how many cops and are we funding cops enough or whatever? So they're pushing this from that perspective of like cops are leaving here, because it's so bad for us. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, and the police force is still way over 30,000 cops in New York. We still have
35, I think.
Way too many goddamn cops in here, and they're just they're getting all hysterical about resignings and retirements basically from cops who would want to get their pension a little quicker and just a little hurt over just the fact that protests happen.
Oh, bad fifis.
Yeah.
Hurt
It's
fifis.
just basically hurt feelings, and over like the slightest little bit of criticism.
Ooh, guess what? Protest works.
There you go, yeah.
That feels uncomfortable. You don't like it? Quit.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Like literally do anything else. I do remember one time, because you know me. I like to, if we get an opportunity to talk to the police, I like to joke them. I call it the joke brigade. So if I get a moment, I will fry you. Like, why is her hat so big? That's sexism. Get her a hat that fits. Like stuff like that. But I asked the cop, I was like, why did you? He's like, why? I was like, why did you be a cop? And he was like, I like riding my bike. I was like, oh, bro, they're seamless for that.
Exactly, yeah.
There's I was like, did you ever think that maybe you could do something else? Like seriously, if riding your bike is what you like doing, and I was like, surely you don't like people yelling at you all the time, right? Like surely this isn't the best you could do with yourself, right? Like we could go live our dreams somewhere. Have you thought about riding your bike cross country just for the fuck of it? Retire. Just like that.
Exactly,
Listen, I'm looking out for your immortal soul, friend. This can't be it for you, right? I don't know. I hope protest works. I hope you're uncomfortable doing your job. I hope it feels shitty for people to yell at
exactly
you.
What it should feel like.
Yeah,
yes,
I want you to find a new thing to do. Are you a good person? Maybe. You picked a shitty ass job. Yeah. You've got an opportunity to not do that now.
Unless they go to Norfolk.
Unless you go to Norfolk, please don't just move. Okay?
Yeah. All right. So, one other thing I think we should talk about is, some of these cases that have come up. In the last month or so, there's been some updates on a shooting that happened earlier this year. Somebody was accused of shooting at police, and then they shot him, and it became a whole, point for Eric Adams to talk about how the police are, dealing with all of this violence, and look at this guy, and I think he almost said like, yeah, they should have shot him or something like that, and then there was concern about it. Anyway, the guy's name was Rameek Smith. There was an incident that happened earlier this year, but body cam footage that came out, I guess, in early September, I guess wasn't consistent with what police said. Surprise, surprise. And then there was this whole kind of debate over, whether the guy had even shot at the cops.
Yeah.
Shots fired. Fuck, I'm clear, man.
Rameek Smith got killed on May 10th. It took 4 months for the video to finally come out. The police claimed that they found a gun on him afterwards, and they recovered a gun, but the videos definitely do not show that. There's controversy over whether the videos do in fact show him shooting at the police, but also in the video you see Eric Adams' infamous neighborhood safety teams, which is just the rebranding of the anti-crime unit.
Anti-crime.
Which was notorious for, jumping out on people and shooting people, killing people. So they run up on him in an unmarked car, and neighborhood safety teams don't have regular police uniforms either. So they, you see
kind of look like security guards. Like it's kind of like a dark uniform.
So if you're Rameek Smith, you're walking down a dark street. you see an unmarked car just pull up on you out of nowhere, and guys with guns come out and start chasing you. And they show in the video he's getting chased. I mean, anyone with a brain, I think, common sense would defend themselves.
And this was the criticism.
Back as someone's shooting at you. I mean, whether it's a cop or not. I mean, just regular human as a human being, you want to defend yourself, defend your own life. If someone's trying to kill me and I got a gun on me and I can kill them first, I'm gonna do that or whatever. The cops get to use that excuse all the time. All the time, even when it's not really they're not under threat.
But
Rameek Smith is under legitimate threat. The NYPD has a history of killing black people in the streets.
That's even if he knew it was NYPD because the
that's
car
even
was
if he
unmarked.
knew. Yes, that's even knew. But even if he knew it was cops, the NYPD has a long reputation, a long history of shooting black people down in the streets or whatever. So like,
just because you know it's police doesn't mean that I'm safe. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Just because I know it's police doesn't, particularly the NYPD, right?
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean that this is a safe situation. These people aren't here to harm me. In fact, the probability of them being here to harm me for little to no reason is actually very high, right? And yeah, here's the thing: your fight or flight kicks in. That's what the police say, right? I don't know. I didn't know if they had a weapon.
Right. Fear for my life.
I fear for my life.
Yep.
It felt threatening. So if he did allegedly shoot at police,
and that's not even that fact is not even we don't even know.
We don't even know for sure.
Just to make that clear, we don't even know if he shot at police.
Yeah.
But even if he did.
Yeah. This is also a part of my reasoning for getting rid of like undercover and like special task force and stuff, because if something goes sideways or goes left, I don't know you're a cop.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do I know? You are just a regular person to me. I'm just a regular person to you, and now I'm in danger, right? So, all the more reason to get rid of, I think, undercover and sting sort of stuff, plainclothes cops,
and one of the cops
it puts them in danger. Yeah. I don't get why they don't get these sort of things, right? Like, not that I super care that they're in danger, but it's just like, don't you all want less of danger?
And one of the cops, Officer Dennis Vargas, had 39 CCRB complaints, 12 of which were substantiated. And it's hard as hell for the CCRB to substantiate an allegation of misconduct against cops. You have to get exact photos and videos and blah, blah, blah. So if this cop has done that much dirt, he has a history
and why are you so
of
a
doing
cop at
dirt.
That point?
So like, Eric Adams used the fact that Rameek Smith had gotten arrested in 2020. He had jumped a turnstile and got arrested for gun possession. Mere gun possession. For black and brown people in New York, just possessing a gun means that cops are allowed to shoot you, basically, whatever. You're not allowed to be armed. We're not allowed to arm ourselves.
No Second
and defend
Amendment for
ourselves.
black and brown folks.
But that's what Eric Adams used essentially to justify these cops shooting people, where this cop has a long history of misconduct. He's part of a racist state-funded gang, the NYPD, with a long history of racist murder. But if you dare defend yourself against them, then you're the bad guy in the press. You're the bad guy according to the mayor.
Yep. So, and I also wanted to, before we jump on to something else, talk a little bit about the body cam angle on this too, because, body cams was rolled out as a reform by Barack Obama, the former mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio. This was like supposed to be like this big reform. Like this was the main like Democrat reform around a little bit after the Ferguson uprisings. And in this case, you have a body cam footage, and it's not clear what happened. It definitely doesn't support what the NYPD was trying to say, and it doesn't. It's not clear even what happened prior to when they shot this guy. So body cams kind of being this panacea for like, hey, we're gonna figure out what's going on, is also like up to question. I
am all for more cameras and more angles, but as soon as I found out that the police can control when they come on and when they cut off, and they can control the footage and the editing, I was just like, oh, well, then this means absolutely nothing. My thing with body cams is that they can be controlled and be manipulated by the police, and they're often
edited. They don't show the context.
They don't show the whole context. And so, which is why Copwatch is also very important.
Right, that's
to
right.
have independent videos not controlled by the police.
That's right.
I do appreciate having extra angles, but when it's controlled by the controllers, then it's automatically unreliable. It takes months for it to come out.
If it does come out, yeah.
Right, and then like you said, it's a panacea. It's really easy to be like, look, we did a thing, right? Like, and then the people who don't pay attention or don't really care are like, oh no, look, there's cameras. They wear cameras now. Yeah. And so you're able to like be placated back to sleep or whatever. Yeah. They're not the end all be all of police accountability, obviously.
And the body cameras are inherently from the police's point of view.
Right.
And, and plus when they do release them, they release someone, cops helping out some puppies on the street or something.
Exactly.
Look, all of a sudden, the body cam comes out quickly.
Perfect. Great quality.
It doesn't fall off.
Controlled by them.
There's audio and stuff like that. When the cops are doing nice things and they want to release body cam footage like that, they're quick to release that video. And they're quick to use the body cams to their own ends, to their own advantage.
But I also am not going to say don't have them. There are a segment of people that are like, get rid of the body. Like, nah, I do need more cameras. But I do understand that you're going to watch this video with a grain of sand, right? A grain of salt, right?
So Gotham is his piece on this. This was something interesting that I also caught. So Gotham is reported on this like body cam footage that didn't quite support it. But then in the story, there's an editor's note on there because apparently after that story was published, kind of saying like, oh, it doesn't seem like what the NYPD said actually happened. They got a bunch of, I guess, either messages or tweets from people who were saying like, oh, actually, I slowed down the camera and it does show that there was a shooting. And they got a guy from John Jay, I think he's a professor at John Jay, former police officer, who's a Twitter guy, big time loser, Peter Moskos, who always is going all out for the cops. And he said he like slowed down the footage and then he saw a flash from a muzzle, not clear, but the whole editor's note was about how like even when you have footage, it also reflects your bias on whether you're going to take police's word for it or not. And something this guy said, I was just like, this captures exactly that problem and like how pro police views it. So he says, we after the video was released, Peter Moskos, a professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, former police officer, downloaded the video, zoomed in and slowed it down. Moskos, who has a doctorate in sociology but is not a forensic video analyst, said he saw a muzzle flash smoke in the victim's weapon. One paragraph down says, as for Moskos, he believes the police accounts are usually true, and I assume the guy did shoot at the cops because that's what they said. Yeah. So, like, this guy's saying it plainly for everybody. It's like, you're biased, and in this case, he's a former police officer. He's teaching. He's teaching at a city university of New York. He's saying that, why wouldn't I believe it? The cops said it. And that's the fundamental problem right there. Now, even if you have footage, people are going to believe what they want to believe. If people are pro-police, like the mayor or like a bunch of other idiots, they're gonna take police's word for it. So like you have to have like super clear evidence to even move these guys.
And it's ridiculous. You have to even give like a freaking a literal former cop, space in an article to come and say, well, the cops said it, so it must be true, and you have to take me seriously because I'm a professor and a cop at a freaking cop school, John Jay Criminal Justice.
I will say that I appreciate the way that editor's note was written up, though. Like,
he's not
just letting you know, this guy is also a cop.
Yeah.
He slowed it down, and just letting you know, he's not a video forensic
yeah.
Just letting you know that he said he seen something, and why wouldn't he believe the guy? Just saying that, just putting that out there.
But even with all that, they still have to give this guy space
in the editor's note, right?
Yeah,
I do appreciate the writer just being like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
If it was up to me,
we would not have put this here.
Yeah, we would not have put this there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, now it's time for Copaganda Report, right? We're going to talk a little bit, or Copaganda Watch. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the worst examples of propaganda that's been going on, I guess, the last month or so. Last episode, we talked a little bit about some stuff that we had seen in the Post. I kind of feel like the New York Post is like low-hanging fruit. It's too easy. I could literally open up the New York Post right now. I could, I could just read from the New York Post for 30 minutes. That's pure propaganda. But let's talk about some of the other stuff that we've seen that's not necessarily New York Post. We can start a little bit with a big move that happened with CNN. CNN brought in somebody straight from the NYPD, John Miller, the head of counterterrorism and intelligence. He's been there for, I think, since the de Blasio era, but he's also formerly been a journalist, then became worked for the police, then went back to journalism. I think all the three networks, ABC, CBS, and I think NBC is where he got his start. So this guy's been using the revolving door between being a journalist and being a cop, literally right at the nexus of copaganda, which is this merging of police and policing and media. So this guy is like Mr. Copaganda, and CNN is like, come on over and he's gonna be an expert on whatever whenever they talk about crime or anything. So this guy's taking his perspectives as this guy who's been in the revolving door between being a cop and a journalist, and he's bringing it to CNN, and CNN is going to tell this to its audience. So this guy's going to be there, kind of breaking down news for the audience of CNN, which reaches millions of people. This is a big time win for propagandists.
CNN likes to position itself as sort of the center, or left of center. And like overall, or typically, I guess for the most part, they are. But when you look at the inner workings and moves like this right here, which have upset folks internally at CNN, there's been a big shakeup in their lineup, and
I believe they also have like a new owner, a new guy in charge, also who wants to make it even more neutral or
even
whatever. Which more means more right wing
to the right. Yeah. So essentially, yes, for the most part, CNN does sort of live in the middle or left of center or whatever. And so when they say they want to make it more neutral. It's not that they want to make it more neutral. They just want to make it more appealing to conservatives. They want to make it. They want to make it more right leaning. Right? They do want to make it actually more of the center, which then means then now you guys don't actually have a point of view. Mm-hmm. When you move to the middle doesn't have a point of view.
I mean, look, to me, John Miller isn't in the middle. I mean, it's a clear point of view. This is a top point of view.
It is, and so what they're trying to do is like mix their more, and that's the thing. They've dropped a couple of people from their primetime spots, right? I think is it Don Lemon? Don Lemon gets at Trump like every fucking night.
And
like,
these aren't far leftists either.
And he's not.
They're not gonna have abolitionists on to be a counterweight to John Miller or anything.
Right? Yeah. Like, Don Lemon is not like, the leftiest of leftists, but he definitely gives it to Trump every night.
Exactly.
They definitely dropped him from his spot. I'm pretty sure he's going to a morning show now or whatever. So yeah, it's pretty obvious with this move what it is they're trying to do. So get ready for your CNN to start tasting a little different.
John Miller is the perfect epitome of the incestuous relationship between media and the police. I mean, this guy has a long history of like almost every damn mainstream outlet, like ABC, NBC, and he worked for the FBI. He's a Bill Bratton, protege. This guy was
just not even like a little bit moving to the
He was pro-war on terror. I've seen him personally out during anti-fascist protests, helping cops repress anti-fascist protests. With Terrence Monahan, no less, another freaking fascist cop too. This guy is like one of the worst fascist cops out there, and a liar as well. He claimed that the NYPD wasn't spying on Muslims after 9/11. Also, there was another case in 1994 where a black woman got raped in a park. And the Daily News and the NYPD both teamed up to smear this woman and claim that she made up the rape in order to promote a pro-queer and trans rally.
Right. They called it a hoax.
Came out later that she was totally right, totally telling the truth. Even after lab reports came out saying that she told the truth, the Daily News still kept on saying the cop side of the story. John Miller was one of these cops.
He was the spokesperson,
to smear this woman.
He was feeding this line to the media and to the columnists of the Daily News, who ultimately wrote a piece basically saying this was a hoax. He was giving that information to journalists, saying like, we think that she's hoaxing it. So he was leading on the press to smear this woman. So the cops literally teamed up, as you said, to smear this woman. To the point that they actually had to apologize a few years ago. I think like 15 or 20 years after it happened, they had to apologize. You know what it takes for the NYPD to apologize? I mean, that means they had to so royally fucking lie.
They were wrong.
They were like so wrong that they had to apologize years after this happened. So this is the guy that CNN is bringing in.
Get ready for your CNN to taste Very different.
That's your taste of neutrality at CNN.
Yeah, that's gonna be what CNN's gonna be neutral on.
And he was lying like right up until this year. Like this year, he was saying fairness and accuracy in reporting. Just had a good story that followed up on the John Miller stuff. About how he's been spewing the stuff about bail reform, which we're going to get into a little bit later in this episode, about bail reform in New York City and how it's leading to all sorts of crime increases and all this. Something that's been debunked by a lot of data that people have put together over the last 2 or 3 years. But he's been spewing it, just lying from his position as a cop, and now he'll be lying from his position as an expert on CNN. So. That's gonna be our copaganda of the month, right? Just that move.
What do they say? Watch this space. So like, I don't know. Watch CNN and let me know what changes you start to see in the next coming months, because I doubt they'll be subtle.
And also just want to really bring up that like John Miller's also a very big war on terror hawk. He's always pushing for war with Iran and stuff like that. He was the counterterror chief for the NYPD, so he's always been like pro surveillance state. Pro spying and killing Muslims here and abroad. So like, whether it's domestic or international stuff, don't expect anything good from this man.
Yeah. So CNN and John Miller, you get our copaganda of the month. Clearly, head and shoulders above everybody else. So a big.
I'm curious to see what sort of changes happen. I'm looking forward to it.
Right. So let's actually just switch gears and talk about something, I guess, good in terms of we did the same thing in episode 1. We bigged up a Bloomberg report that talked about crime and perception of crime. So we kind of gave a thumbs up to kind of the coverage out of all places Bloomberg last month. This episode we'll talk a little bit about something on the John Oliver show. You guys, something about Law and Order and stuff. You guys saw this segment.
Warren Light, Law and Order SVU's former longtime showrunner, talk about an unexpected group of viewers that he learned about.
We've also found out over time, and this is a little anxiety-provoking for me, that a lot of cops aren't trained in how to do their job in cases of sexual assault, and a lot of cops get a lot of their information from watching SVU. Which a lot of police departments don't have the time or the money to put people through formal training.
Yeah, that's not great, is it? Nobody should be learning how to do their job from a TV show, unless, of course, your job happens to be telling jokes to mask your deep-seated feelings of emptiness and existential dread, in which case, keep watching, you might pick up some tips.
Fill us in.
Oh man! First and foremost, I love me some John Oliver. I've got some friends and colleagues I know that write for John Oliver. If you don't watch, it's great. Every Sunday he takes a big problem and lays it out and goes through all the ins and outs of a societal issue. This week, speaking of copaganda, he was talking about Law and Order, the television show Law and Order, and how Law and Order is like direct copaganda, and just
pure,
unadulterated, not stepped on.
Yeah, exactly.
Copaganda straight from the NYPD, and how the producers and writers of Law and Order work right hand in hand with the NYPD to craft these stories that. Law and Order be on a marathon, B.
Yes.
We can turn on a TV right now. I promise you, on some channel.
One of the Law and Orders.
One of them Law and Orders, right? Especially the special victims, right?
Yes,
So what he talks about is how Dick Wolf,
the creator.
The name says it all, right?
Yeah, it was just a great name, obviously.
Dick Wolf. I'm not even gonna lie, that is a great name. But Dick Wolf, how he works hand in hand with the NYPD to take one of the like beauties, or one of the like the allure of Law and Order is that the majority of the episodes are taken from real world cases, and they take these things and they make it seem like the NYPD is a hero. They get everything wrapped up in 45 minutes. If you were raped, we caught that rapist. He's in jail. If you were robbed, or like we got that in 45 minutes, right? To contrast that with exactly how the NYPD works.
Yeah, exactly. And like we said, in real life, the Special Victims Unit is notorious for not giving a damn about survivors.
Your rape kit collecting dust somewhere.
Yeah. And just recently, Anna Chambers, for example, who was a woman who got raped by 2 NYPD cops a few years ago. She had to settle for a much smaller settlement in court because her lawyer basically said that before the case happened, there was no law forbidding cops from having sex with people in their custody. Anna Chambers had been arrested when she had sex with these 2 cops. They had her in the back of a van in the middle of a parking lot in the dark in Brooklyn, basically. These cops got off. They didn't get in trouble. All their sexual assault charges got dropped or whatever. They got charged with bribery or whatever. They didn't serve any time in jail, whatever. This is what happened. This is how the NYPD treats survivors.
Oh no! But if this was written up by Dick Wolf, no, you're telling the wrong story, right? In the segment, even. They asked, like, you know, where do you get the inspiration for these stories? It's from the front page of the Post.
They asked them, the question was, what's the Bible for the show? The Bible for the show. And he said the front page of the New York Post.
Right.
Which should tell you every damn thing about this damn show.
And then when asked, well, you're writing these stories up, and they brush them up to make the NYPD look good. And it was asked, well, there's just as many stories about the NYPD not being the hero. How come those and everything? He's like, no one wants to watch that.
Exactly, yeah.
No one wants to watch that. That's not gonna sell. So his job is to take the NYPD, take police in general, because people, you know, yes, the show is about NYPD, but this, you know, people watch this show and they think this is how police will act. Yeah. They will break the law, right?
Yes, they'll beat people.
They show so many episodes where Detective Stabler is smashing someone's head into the table,
and it's all good though because he's going for justice.
Because the perp deserves it.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing what he's got to do to keep us safe.
He's doing what he's got to do. So Dick Wolf's entire job is to take these stories, brush them up, and then sell them like the police are the heroes, right? Of course, he's not going to do any episodes where they're not, because that's not part of the narrative, right? And he knows this, and he says this as much. And the shows like Law and Order, but Law and Order specifically does a lot of carrying the water, lifting the weight for the NYPD, and even people who know for sure that they should be critical of the police are like, but I love me some Law and Order, you know? Like,
and in the segment, he even shows like even a local news reporter interviewing a police official, and you know, basically saying like, so it's for you, is the show just like real life or whatever, like just like fanboying over an actual police official, and like
it's harder.
You know. These shows are straight up propaganda in the sense that like they shape people's views of what real life is.
Yeah.
People watch these shows and actually think this is what happens in real life.
Yeah.
Olivia Benson, who is the character, which is based on Linda Fairstein, the woman who, you know, and John Oliver brings us up,
Railroaded the
Central Park 5 or whatever. People will say, you know, Olivia Benson wouldn't let, you know, survivors, you know, not get their justice or whatever.
Olivia Benson's not real!
So obviously the NYPD in real life, there must be in a real life Olivia Benson, obviously, you know, out there getting justice for survivors, when the fact is it's the farthest thing from the truth. And even in the segment, Dick Wolf says, I'm kind of unabashedly pro-law enforcement.
Wow.
I mean, it just lays it out right there for you.
Well, let's take him at his word. You know, and you know what? It's not the only show. We should say there's other shows, Blue Bloods. There's similar like movies. Like think of like a Mark Wahlberg movie about the military, right? Like to you know, to shine the image of the army.
Every single cop show, it goes all the way back to, what is that shit? Dragnet. Dragnet was the first Law and Order, right? And they had it scripted down to even the way the guys walked, right? Like you don't even swing your arms because you're a detective, you know? So like, cop shows are designed to do that. Law and Order being the most, I guess, prolific. Yeah. And all the spin-offs and on syndication. Like I said, you could turn the TV on right now.
It's a franchise.
And John Oliver even shows, you know, clips of the actors saying like, the cops say they love our show. The cops are saying it's the best recruitment tool ever, and stuff like that. And Dick Wolf even name drops Ray Kelly and Bill Bratton as cops he spends a lot of time with.
Oh, of course.
I mean, these are the two. Ray Kelly, notorious for stop and frisk under Bloomberg, and Bill Bratton, notorious for broken windows policing, two racist fascist cops, if there ever were any. And these are the cops he spends time with.
Listen, folks, I really hope that we can watch television and figure out that it's not real. Okay? Like, honestly, though, like, as a television show, cool, great drama. Yeah. But if you are watching this show, or any fucking show, please understand that it's television, it's fantasy, everything is heightened. Okay, like, sure, they're great actors, but that's exactly what it is, B. It's acting, okay? And any messages that you get from this show, they are planted there for a reason. But look, check this out. If Law & Order turned on the TV right now, I would watch it. I'm just saying, I would watch it, but I also know that's not real. Yeah. That's not real, okay? So, I'm sorry to pop anybody's bubble. That's not real.
Yeah,
that's
so
propaganda.
Tip of the hat to the John Oliver Show, and then middle finger to Law and Order. And what's the network that runs Law and Order?
All of them, bitch.
All of them? So, to all of them.
You could watch, I'm trying to tell you, we could probably turn on Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
No, which is another illustration of how thoroughly saturated and infested TV is with propaganda. Everywhere you turn, and in the movies and in TV, everywhere you go, you get the pro-police perspective, whereas our perspective...
It's the dominant perspective.
Listen, as long as the cop arrests the perp at the end of the day, he could slap his wife, he could be drugged on the job, like, and we love that cop, right? Yeah. And also, I just want to let folks know, the reason why the crooked cop trope exists, because it's real.
Yeah.
The reason why we love the crooked cop is because that's a real dude.
Yeah.
That's a real dude. That's why he shows up in every fucking movie, right? Yep. And they just let him do whatever he wants to do because, what is it? He's the hero because at the end of the day, he gets the perk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's why cops walk around thinking they can do whatever the fuck they want to do because as long as you get the perk, right? That's what the movie say.
Yep.
Exactly.
So anyway.
All right, let's switch gears and now talk a little bit about something that's actually happened a little bit on social media, something that's being pushed from what I saw online on TikTok, which is this idea of a purge law in Chicago.
Which is unacceptable. As of January 1st, 2023, the following things will go into effect, and people need to be aware of this. It abolishes cash bail for almost every offense. This includes, but isn't limited to, kidnapping, armed robbery, second-degree murder, drug-induced homicide, aggravated DUI, threatening a public official, and aggravated fleeing and eluding. Offenders released on electronic monitoring have to be in violation for 48 hours before law enforcement can act. They could almost drive to Alaska before we can even look for them. It denies victims their constitutional rights. And keep this in mind, businesses and homeowners. Officers will no longer be able to remove trespassers from your residence or your businesses. Someone could decide to live in your shed, and all we can do is give them a ticket. You have to decide what level of force is required to remove them, and whether or not it's legal. This is a massive threat to the residents of Orland Park, Cook County, and Illinois.
So, Ash, you want to give us a little background on this? This sounds a little bit kind of like bail reform in New York.
It is. It's basically just like the very modest bail reform we had here in New York or whatever. It's called, the actual name of the act is the Illinois Pretrial Fairness Act. But that kind of name doesn't sound good for the cops and prosecutors and the fascists. So they started calling it the Purge Law.
So unfortunately, with social media, which should be, ideally should be a way to criticize power, criticize cops, or, criticize the establishment. Some people on social media have been pushing this and calling it the Purge Law because there's this movie called The Purge, right? Where all laws are off the books for one night or 24 hours, something like that. That's the premise of the movie, and people could do whatever they want. They could murder, they could steal, they could do anything, right?
So they're equating letting a few non-violent offenders out, not locking the whole world up before your trial. They're equating that to letting violent and dangerous criminals out to purge the streets, right? So we got to call it something crazy. We got to call it something scary so that we can keep people in jail for indefinitely. But that's what'd you say? It's modest. This is what we actually probably should already be doing.
Just to illustrate what the law is about, there's a great piece in The Griot by Olayemi Olorin, who's a public defender with the Legal Aid Society. This is what she wrote. The law does not mean that people are exempt from going to jail pre-trial as critics claim. people can and will still be detained. Under the new law, instead of the existing cash bail system, where anyone with money can be released regardless of whether they pose a danger to public safety, the new system would actually acknowledge both the presumption of innocence and public safety, two factors that cash bail never considers. Under the new law, people charged with a crime can be detained if a prosecutor presents evidence to a judge that a person is 1, a threat to public safety, 2, a flight risk from prosecution, 3, violated any terms of their release, or 4, were simply accused of mostly felony crimes. Despite the numerous infographics floating around erroneously claiming that judges and prosecutors will be unable to detain people accused of murder and other violent crimes, what the law does is establish a higher standard for detainment. That's all it does. This is the most modest ass reform.
Facts don't matter, B.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a cop, facts don't. If I'm a cop or a fascist, or if I want to lock people up, facts don't matter.
Yep.
So no. It's a purge law. We're letting folks out to go murder. We can't lock up the murderers. So.
And the video I saw on TikTok also starts with a video of what looks like a Chicago police union official, I think, testifying.
Is Keith Pacal, the guy? I think he's the mayor of some little city or whatever.
Or maybe a mayor. Okay.
Yeah.
They're, he's just a cop-looking guy, right?
Yeah.
And he's there saying like, what we're gonna do, we're the anarchy is gonna reign and blood's gonna be all over some apocalyptic message, and that's the basis of people's getting their information. And this is one of those moments where social media, which should be ideally a way to go up against the establishment, go up against power, is actually spreading misinformation about something as Ash describes it, pretty modest bail reform, which we've already had in New York, right? Which hasn't led, by all research, to any violent spikes here, but the cops and the police unions and unfortunately this viral tweet that's been going around are kind of pushing this idea, which is basically what conservatives are saying every single day now. They're just saying they're trying to cut back even on this one reform and have it back to the days where you could lock people up, indefinitely. And
like you said, there have been multiple studies in D.C., in Nassau County, multiple studies showing over and over and over again that these modest bail reforms don't raise crime. The vast majority of the people who get out because of these bail laws, they don't, do another crime, they'll do another violent crime or anything like that. There's just no, and even crime goes down when these bail
But I
reforms
think what it goes to is something we were sort of touching on and talking about earlier, is that conservatives are really invested right now in making major cities seem scary and lawless and get out and we're being too nice to criminals and allowing them to run rampant. I mean, I have a old friend that I just reconnected with, a pale person, right? In Idaho, right? And he's still living in New York, and I was like, yeah. They're like, what's that like since 2020? And I was like, it's fine. Yeah. I'm like, I'm sorry, what do you think it is? And she's not conservative. She's not. She just lives in fucking Idaho, and is white. So all of her information is filtered through that. And she was like, once I told her, I was like, it's fine. She was like, I couldn't imagine that it was what people are saying it is, that it's lawless and there's dead bodies in the street and we never recovered from COVID, and because of COVID people are just like, it's just Mad Max in the city and just everyone's getting robbed and raped everywhere, right? And she was like, I couldn't imagine it was actually like that. But that's what conservatives are invested in making cities. So what people are hearing is that Chicago is purging. And so it's like, oh wow, those places are lawless.
Olayemi brings up in her article in the Griot that even in black social media sites like a Bolo Alert or Shade Room and stuff like that, they're planting stories calling this the Purge Law, basically to get black people to think going.
I got in an argument with a coworker, like a real knockdown argument where she almost started crying, right? A black woman. When I tried to tell her that in New York City, actually, crime is actually low right now, and it's kind of at its lowest point it's been in 20, 30 years. And she was like, I don't believe it. And I was like, I know it probably doesn't feel like it or sound like it because what you see in the news and on the newspaper, but I'm trying to tell you, New York City is actually one of the safest places to be right now.
One of the safest big cities in America.
One of the safest big cities in America. She's like, that's not what and she was like, I don't know where you getting your... I'm like, where am I getting my... From the crime statistics, babe. It's not... She was like, well, I don't know if you've been to the hood. I'm like, I live in the hood. Like, what do you... But you're buying whatever story that is, that New York is unsafe right now, you know?
And like the New York Post a few years ago looked into the stats themselves and disproved it themselves.
Right.
And yet the New York Post still runs with the bail reforms are horrible. They're doing all these horrible things, even though the very paper itself, their own people, their own reporters.
I remember that piece.
Debunked
I remember that piece. That was right at the beginning when they started pushing out this stuff about bail reform. The data never supported it. The NYPD. So anyway, like. There's a point in which, too, like, the evidence, like, we could argue the evidence, but they don't really care about the evidence. The evidence doesn't matter. The point is fear, right? Fear City.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that Batman movie when the Scarecrow gasses the whole, gasses everybody in Gotham and everybody's, people right now are scared, and it doesn't help that, social media accounts are running with this Purge Law because the Purge, right? It sounds like crazy and almost sexy to talk about something so scary, right? But it doesn't really fit reality. And that's actually what that Bloomberg article we talked about last month talked about too, like the perceptions of crime continue to be a problem. Exactly. And it's also not just conservatives, but also, and this has been going on social media. I promised myself I wasn't going to talk about it because these people are not worth talking about. But this is also like on liberal shows, like the Young Turks.
Young Turks.
They've been talking about it, and people have been, like arguing about this with them. I'm gonna give us 1 minute to talk about them because my personal opinion is we shouldn't even take the time to talk about Young Turks because to me they're garbage anyway. But what do you guys think?
I would just say I think it's almost even more insidious than what conservatives do.
Exactly. Yeah.
And like while I may, in my heart of hearts, believe that they mean well, you don't. You don't. You know exactly what you're trying to do, and that's still trying to gin up fear for your ideology. Which, right, I don't always think ends justify the means. That's not always the case.
Just yesterday, they had Olayemi on to talk about prison abolition because the Young Turks have been talking shit about abolitionists lately, saying like, this is absurd, you can't run on this will never work, you people just want people to run around and be violent and get away with it, whatever. And she tried to very calmly and nicely just educate them. And Cenk Uygur, who's the CEO of the Young Turks, came out and said, I used to support bail law, but now I think I'm wrong because, the cops say they don't want to arrest anybody anymore. He just spouted off a whole bunch of propaganda, and she called him on it. She said, I think you're relying on a whole lot of propaganda.
Yeah.
And he was basically saying, no, you're not acknowledging Cenk Uygur was saying that Olayemi was not acknowledging the reality, when it was totally the other way around. He was the one not acknowledging
I almost
reality.
prefer you to be a conservative and just disregard the facts than be a liberal or Democrat and like be dumb.
She works in New York City in the court system. She sees it like, how does this guy think that he knows more about what's happening with bail reform in New York or anywhere than talking about it with a public defender, a black public defender at that. What's his name again?
Cenk Uygur.
All right, I've seen pictures of this guy. This guy like wears like a blazer all the time. Yeah. Anyone who like voluntarily wears a blazer should not be trusted anyway. And then his counterpart, what's her name?
Anna Kasparian.
I mean, nice blazers. Don't do that.
She looks like the prototypical white liberal woman who will put BLM in her window, but then like secretly like call the cops like out of her brownstone because people are like playing dice late at night or something.
Cenk Uygur brings up in the interview they had with her saying like, oh, you're not acknowledging the lived experience of a lot of poor middle class working people who's saying. There's a guy, they're calling the cops and saying, there's a guy on my corner selling fentanyl, and the cops aren't coming. And he think that's real. He think that's really happening.
That's a real scenario?
She tried to patiently tell him, like, no, the cops are arresting people like crazy. Like, people are getting arrested. People are going through the system. Like,
nobody just sells fentanyl either. Right?
So, and I want to remind people that, like, this was the same kind of, reaction they had when stop and frisk got reduced when the Floyd v. City, New York case happened. Mm-hmm. Right after that decision came down, the New York Post and Daily News came out and was saying it's going to be chaos in the streets. There's going to be killing and and rapes all across New York City because they're gonna do less stop and frisk now. And of course, it took years before they finally acknowledged that never materialized, whatever. But even for years afterwards, they were still saying, "Oh, see, violence is going up. There's more shootings, even though the data didn't support any of that." Yep. So it'll probably take years before the media and the cops finally acknowledge, like, "Oh shoot, the bail reform didn't lead to chaos in the streets. The purge didn't happen in real life or whatever."
I remember earlier this year, it was like like 1 week in particular, like a bunch of people got pushed on the train tracks, and they were like, "It's an epidemic," and I was like, bro, you realize like this amount of people get pushed on the train tracks every year. It just unfortunately happened in like one weekend. Yeah. But I was like, so it feels like it's a lot because it all happened at the same time. But guess what? That's the average number, B. Like that is what happens.
It's also like important. Like there was a once in 100-year pandemic, literally destabilized people's lives. So there was bound to be a lot of destabilized people and destabilized fucking communities and shit that happened. Like we literally lived through something that we've never seen in our entire lifetime, and like they never talk about it. They're like, "Oh, it was actually this bail reform that happened in 2019 that actually happened." By the way,
or they'll be able to protest. The police got defunded when it did happen.
No one fucking did. This is the most funded police department in the history of humanity.
Yeah. In fact, the police got more funding.
More money, yes.
More funding. Yeah.
So to the
we went in the opposite direction, B.
Yeah. So to the Young Turks, also a big middle finger. Fuck you to them. I didn't want to spend too much time on that because you know what, with people like this, I don't feel like it's even worth debating them because they are clear with what they are pushing, and they knew what they were doing. So anyway, I think we're out of time.
Can't think of nothing else.
Yeah. Listen, Elsa.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Folks, this is fun. I had a great time.
Word.
Please have me back. Plug like 2-3 things.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Do it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I teach stand-up comedy, goldcomedy.com. We're back to the face-to-face classes at Tiny Cupboard in Williamsburg. No, sorry, not Williamsburg. It's on like the Bushwick, Bed-Stuy border. So check out Tiny Cupboard. Check out the classes. Also, check me out on BET, On the Ropes, Roast Battle Show. I be roasting. Find me on the Twitter at Elsa, just Elsa. Please, all 3 words. I didn't realize that was going to be weird to say out loud. It makes sense on paper. It's Elsa, and then the word just, and then Elsa again.
Elsa, just Elsa.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be back next month with another podcast, and we'll be back with more copaganda and stuff. Also, shout out to on Twitter at the Problem Solver, ThePrblmSLVR, because he gave us the tip about the Purge Law stuff that was going on. So, as promised, if you guys have copaganda, examples, tips, send them to us, DM us. Put them in the comments on our post on Twitter. Just let us know and we'll shout you out and we'll tip you the hat to you for that tip. All right. So thanks again, guys, for jumping on, and we'll see you guys next time.
Awesome. Peace.